Hi there, welcome back to Fully Blessed. I'm Amanda, and this is the channel where we discuss timeless truths about issues that are important to women of faith. And today we're talking about a very big and very hot button issue of politics. I feel like this is especially on people's minds right now leading into the election. And so let's talk about it a little bit today. How should Christians respond to politics and Christians being in government and voting, and what about those who are in office now? How do we think about them? Let's talk about some of those things today. So first, I just want to say that this issue of politics and voting, government, this is at best a secondary issue. And what I mean by that is, while it might be very important, and it certainly impacts a lot of our life, this is not an issue that is important to our salvation. So what that means is, this is not something that we need to be upset and divide with other believers over. There are many solid believers who vote for whatever reason on both sides of the aisle. So be gracious with each other, be patient with each other, especially at this highly emotional time, and have a discussion with each other, but just know that this is ultimately not of primary importance. And second, relatedly, is the fact that this subject brings a lot of stress and a lot of fear and anxiety, but I just want to remind you and encourage you that no matter who is president, Jesus will always be king. We know the end of the story, and we know how it turns out. So don't let the idea of how the election turns out in November cause you to stay up at night. I also want you to remember that no matter who is president, we will never have a perfect person in office. We will never have a perfect form of government. We will never have a perfect nation. Right now, we are dealing with the laws that we have, and we're doing the best with what we have. But ultimately, we know that we're working with flawed people who are sinners, and we're working with a broken world. And that involves our politics. So be patient and just know, as much as we have opinions on one person or the other, we're never going to get a perfect person in office. So how should we think about voting or being in government offices as believers? Well, the Bible doesn't specifically address this issue, but we do see examples in the Bible of believers, both, I believe, in the Old and New Testament, of those who are believers availing themselves of the rights that are afforded to them and taking advantage of the proper channels that are in place. I think this is a great thing. I think that it is a great thing that, in my opinion, that believers are voting and running for office. The world of politics is a very dark world, and we need people who are speaking the truth of the gospel in that realm, right? And in this country, we have the very unique privilege of voting. I think we take that for granted. Many other countries don't get to do this. We have the unique privilege as citizens of this country to vote and to affect change. And so I think that is wonderful that we can do that. So I would encourage you to do that if that is where your conscience leads you. Take advantage of this right afforded to you. I also think it's important to remember, speak now or forever hold your peace. If you have opinions, now is the time to voice them with your vote. But afterwards, we don't get to be upset, especially if we didn't vote. We have our time now, so use it wisely. I also want to remind you not to knock the office of president. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people who, depending on who's in office, they get very upset. And suddenly, just because they don't like the person, they say derogatory things about the office. Let's remember that even if we don't like the person in that chair, that person is still our commander-in-chief and still deserves our respect. They're still the head of our country, and they still deserve the honor afforded that office, even when we don't like them. And this is a very stressful job. The president goes through many things, so many decisions he has to make. We will never know all the near misses. We will never know all the stressful decisions he has to make with so many different angles that we will never hear about because we're not president. So just remember that this is a very important and very stressful job. So don't knock it until we've walked a mile in their shoes, which many of us will not. And sometimes that's a good thing. I also want to talk a little bit about Christians and viewing authority. So how do we view those who are in office? How do we view those and relate to those who are in authority in government positions? Well, the New Testament very explicitly gives the command that we are to honor those in authority, not only in the church, but in government as well. And I remind myself that the biblical writers who penned, the biblical authors who penned the scriptures that we read, those who were in power at that time, they were very evil, wicked men. And still, they wrote to the church at that time to obey and submit and honor the king. So I think that that's a very important principle for us today to remember. We are not at liberty to malign or speak shamefully about our leaders in government or any form of authority, even and maybe especially when we don't like them. So when we're voting, let's just think about voting with our conscience. Where is God directing us to vote? Not that we're necessarily going to always be loyal just to a certain party, and so I'm always going to vote for that party. Rather, just consider with your conscience and be praying as you do this, which candidate most supports the values that align with my beliefs. And then vote as your conscience is leading you. Or don't, if that's where your conscience is leading you. It might be better for you to not vote. It would still be my personal opinion that voting is the best thing, but if that's where your conscience is leading you, that you can't in good faith vote for any of the candidates, then don't, and that is okay too. In everything that we do, let our desire be to honor God in whichever decision that you make. And I want to end just by touching on social media. I did a whole video on social media, which I will link after this, but let's just remember that, especially as we lead into an election, don't post or respond to political posts online. I know it's so tempting and we all have so much that we want to say, but no one's mind was ever changed by another Facebook post or another yard sign. Just let it rest. It's not helpful. It's not the right environment to have those deep conversations that these subjects really deserve. So just don't even go there. I believe it's also a matter of wisdom to not take your opinions on political candidates or political issues from memes. Memes are a very big thing and we all love them, but they're meant to be satire. They're meant to be funny. They're meant to be entertainment. They're not necessarily meant to give you information, at least not complete, whole, accurate information. So just be very careful about forming opinions about anyone, especially those running for office, from a meme. I would also like to remind you, that our social media information that comes from online or the news or newspapers, wherever you're getting it from, this is usually secondhand information. Okay? Unless you're watching a debate and you hear it all said completely in context from the person, anything that you're getting is likely going to be secondhand. And also, we all as humans have biases. And so, whether we realize it or not, what's being told to us is probably going to be with a slight bent and probably not in its complete full context. So just be aware of where you're getting your information from as you form your decisions about going to the polls in November. So that's all I have for today. If this has been helpful for you, like and subscribe. Please remember, if you're going to leave a comment, to be kind and respectful, and watch the video next about social media. And until next time, remember that you are blessed because of the work Jesus has done for you. So go and be a blessing today.